So there is a lot of noise around Three-Eye Atlas right now.
Three-Eye Atlas.
Three-Eye Atlas.
Three-Eye Atlas.
Three-Eye Atlas.
Three-Eye Atlas? No. When Avi Loeb does scientific work on this object, we should not accept it. Why? Because a group of other people said to him that we should not consider any anomalies. And I say, well, exactly this sentence that he said at the end, where the object doesn't show any non-gravitational acceleration, that sentence is an anomaly.
If you're of the curious kind and want to know what the hell that giant space rock is actually up to, you've probably gone digging around on the internet and maybe found yourself confronted with sensational headlines warning you about things like the imminent arrival of our alien overlords or that Judgment Day is finally upon us. And you better prepare yourself to feel the fiery pits of Mount Doom because humanity has failed miserably.
Able to explain them as hoaxes, erroneously identified friendly aircraft, meteorological or electronic phenomena, or as light aberration.
Fear of ridicule was the foundation on which the cover-up was placed. But I suspect in something which is as unacceptable as a reality as this phenomenon, no piece of physical evidence would satisfy anybody.
Now, I should say from the outset, I hadn't intended to make this video. I was engaged into some other threads connected to Three-Eye Atlas, and that's when the algorithm did a quick bait and shift, and all of a sudden it was in fearmonger mode, and I find out the world's most notorious prophets had apparently foreseen this interstellar comet's arrival, and we're all screwed. And with that new knowledge, I decided to take a look at some of these claims, and I'll admit, I was skeptical just due to the general clickbaity aesthetic of all of these videos. But the names attached to these prophecies did pique my interest because these are psychics and mystics that, regardless of their debatable accuracy rates, still carry a lot of weight in the world of foresight today. All that to say, I approach this with an open mind. Cautious, but I was open nonetheless because I am a believer in psychic abilities. So, what did I find? Do you need to get digging the bunker and stop piling canned food? Let's jump right in with good old Nostradamus, a French prophet from the 16th century and one of the supposed historical forewarners of our impending doom. But before we get to that, let's get to know the man behind the legend first. Michel de Nostradamus was a physician trained in the humanist sciences of the Renaissance. He was highly regarded for his work during plague outbreaks, but sadly, that same illness would lead to the death of his wife and children. It's said that this loss had such a devastating effect on Nostradamus that it would become the catalyst that birthed his prophetic texts. His most famous work, written in 1555, consists of hundreds of what are formerly called quatrains, organised into 10 centuries. The writing is dramatic. You have wars, plagues, earthquakes, floods, and that all sounds pretty familiar. But modern scholars argue that Nostradamus was more of a compiler than a visionary. He drew heavily on classical histories, medieval chronicles, and especially apocalyptic texts such as the Mirabilis Liber, which at the time was a popular anonymous compilation of predictions by various Christian saints and diviners, which first made the rounds in France in 1522. In other words, at least according to scholars, many of his prophecies were adapted from well-worn traditions rather than newly conceived visions. In his famous text from 1555, Nostradamus is deliberately obscuring his meaning. He blends French, Latin, Greek, and Italian. He employed things like anagrams, mythological allusions, and astrological references, and this ambiguity served as a form of protection during Nostradamus' lifetime, as the Inquisition were not exactly fans of unauthorized prophecy. So that obscurity provided a shield. The consequence of said shield is that the verses contain virtually no fixed timeline. They lack coherent dating markers, and where interpreters have attempted at least to extract hidden codes through things like numerology, astrology, even the Kabbalah, let's just say the results have been questionable, So what did Nostradamus say 2025 had in store for us? Did he truly foresee the arrival of Three-Eye Atlas in our solar system and our subsequent alien invasion? To answer that, we need to go back to 1555 and to Quatrain 97.
At 45 degrees the sky will burn. Fire will approach the great new city. When they will want to test the two rivers, the great human fire will vanish in the night.
Ominous, sure. But given he offers no date for this event, makes no mention of a comet or asteroid specifically, or even what might have been known by a fireball in the sky during his lifetime, what's to stop us assigning these verses wherever we see fit? It hasn't. The earliest retrospective connection goes back to the Great Fire of London in 1666. The 45 degrees was loosely tied to the city's latitude, which is actually around 51 degrees north, but some stretch the interpretation to a directional or astrological angle. The Great New City was said to be a reference to London, rebuilt after the fires, and the two rivers are the Thames and its estuaries. The Great Flame vanishing was seen as a fire burning out, a link that emerged only after the event. Then we can go to the 17th century, where astrologers linked Kirch's comet with the same verse. Appearing before the Great Plague and Fire, the verse, "The sky will burn," was associated with its blazing trail. The Great New City, once again, was London, the two rivers, the Thames and its estuaries, and the flame vanishing was tied to the comet's fade, or the fire and the city actually ending. Take your pick, but this interpretation gained traction enough at the time that it was printed in pamphlets and sermons. Then we can skip forward to the 19th century, where Nostradamus enthusiasts connected these verses again to Paris during the French Revolution of 1789 to 1799. Paris, being located at 48 to 49 degrees north latitude, was close enough to 45 degrees with some rounding, I guess, and that accounted for the new city due to its revolutionary transformation. The two rivers were interpreted as the Seine and the Marne, and the Great Flame as a revolutionary fervour or the fires of the war. But it doesn't stop there. This verse also managed to find itself connected to World War II and Hiroshima. Post-war interpreters, including occult writers in the 1950s, linked the Quatrain to the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, which is about 34 degrees north, but conveniently adjusted to 45 degrees via speculative astrological charts and compass bearings. The Great New City was deemed to be Hiroshima. It was a modern urban centre at the time. The two rivers became the two Ota River branches, and the Great Flame, of course, the nuclear blast. Last, and perhaps the most important given the context of this video, is the connection made with the comet Hale-Bopp in 1997. With its perihelion near a 45-degree declination, its brightness connected to the sky will burn verse, the Great New City speculated as New York, and the two rivers being the Hudson and East Rivers, this prophecy would find its way into online forums and New Age circles in the 1990s. And we all know how that ended up. Or do we? That's for another day. And now we find ourselves in 2025 with yet another Quatrain 97 connection on our hands. So Three-Eye Atlas's perihelion on October 29th, when it nears Mars, may be visible from the latitudes, you guessed it, 45 degrees north. As for the rest of the prophecy, I'm sure it's become obvious by now all the ways in which it can be made to fit depending on the circumstance. And look, in my opinion, and you do not have to agree with me, it appears that what we're seeing here is a case of projection and not prophecy. And I could be dead wrong, because maybe Three-Eye Atlas is exactly the sky-burning phenomena Nostradamus foresaw when he composed those particular verses. But how would I know? How could anybody ever know? We have no specific dating, ambiguous imagery, and words of an intentionally adaptable nature, which ultimately means it's left to the interpreters of the time to draw their own conclusions. And so they will. This next prophecy is actually pretty wild to me, because I noticed early on in my research, it's the one that appears to have generated the most amount of online content. The clickbait vampires really leaned into this one, and so enter Baba Vanga. Vangelia Pandeva Dimitrova, otherwise known as Baba Vanga or the Nostradamus of the Balkans, was a Bulgarian oracle of the 20th century. Born in 1911, according to her testimony, at the age of 13, she was swept up in a tornado where her injuries resulted in her eventual blindness. During World War II, Yugoslavia was invaded and carved up by the Axis powers. During this time, Vanga gained notoriety for her abilities to heal and clairvoyance, which attracted patrons from far and wide to seek her gifts in a hope to get a hint about whether their relatives were alive or the place they may have died. After World War II, the Bulgarian police and communist parties tried to suppress Vanga's activities, but that did not stop people seeking her out for guidance. Vanga eventually died in 1996, but her prophetic fame continues to soar in the 21st century. But I feel that it is important to note when it comes to Vanga that she never actually wrote any of her visions down. Any of the primary sources attributed to her work are said to have come from those close to her at the time, and even then, it can get a little sketchy. The gist of the claims being peddled today is that Vanga predicted the arrival of ETs cruising here on 3i Atlas in 2025 to finally take over the planet, and we're all doomed. And let me tell you, I tried too hard for too long to trace a primary source for this prophecy or something even remotely along the lines of any extraterrestrial event connected to Vanga, all to no avail. And yet, it had to have come from somewhere, and I was left to assume that my little human brain didn't have the internet traversing skills to get to the bottom of this. So, I'll admit, I had to turn to good old AI to continue the grunt work, and I'm just going to read word for word what each model had to say by the end of their investigations. I shall let them speak for themselves. Let's start with Groff, who had to say, in summary, this is internet folklore, not a genuine Vanga prophecy, born from late 2024 speculation and supercharged by 2025 comet news for clicks. ChatGPT said the alien contact narrative has no verified basis in Vanga's recorded or archived prophecies. It seems to be a modern fabrication layered onto her legend. And lastly, just for good measure, I tried Gemini, who had to say, in short, the core search into the origin of the extraterrestrial contact in 2025 reveals a significant source vacuum. A source vacuum. I don't even know what to say about that. And I'll also add here that the Bulgarian State Archive retains all audio recordings of Vanga's seances and interviews, and according to an official source there, the archival recordings do not contain great prophecies of global events, personalities, or any sort of world affair. Most of them just contain, in their words, ordinary requests, people coming for personal help and advice rather than sweeping universal prophecies. And yet, this false narrative continues to run rampant all over YouTube and X. So who do we actually have to thank for propagating all of this? To which, again, I had to employ AI to track down the perpetrators because it was starting to feel like this entire thing just rose from thin air. But it was Grok that finally came through after finding some suspicious archiving and evidence erasing, and lo and behold, we have our masterminds. Ah yes, Lad Bible, the arbiters of truth and home of top-tier journalism. But where did they get it from? Nowhere. Though they've conveniently wiped the first piece where they start this fire, the internet never forgets, and so we can read in their own words how they drew this conclusion. Baba Vanga has a long history with aliens and alien invasions. She thought we'd get to meet our interstellar neighbours in 2022, but unless we missed something pretty major, that didn't happen. Turns out those other predictions were false starts though. 2025 is definitely the year. Apparently, the aliens' appearance will coincide with a major sporting event. Perhaps they just want to catch Kendrick Lamar's halftime show at the Super Bowl. Turns out they began this myth in October 2024, and once 3i Atlas turned up and Avi Loeb entered the chat, they doubled down. They continue to push the Vanga alien 3i Atlas propaganda, but just know it's completely baseless. And next we have our favourite sleeping prophet, which is of course Mr. Edgar Cayce. Cayce's visions have captivated the world since 1877, and with over 14,000 psychic readings to choose from, it's not surprising that when something as culturally popular as Three Eye Atlas comes to be, so does a Cayce doom prophecy. Born in rural Kentucky and a devout Christian, Cayce was no ordinary psychic. With just a 6th grade education, he went on to captivate the masses with his trance-like state, where he returned with unconventional remedies to cure the sick, earning him the title of a medical clairvoyant. Cayce's visions, like the rise of Atlantis, future pole shift, catastrophic natural disasters, or souls from distant stars, still spark debate today. Was he a visionary or a dreamer? Should we heed his warning of Three Eye Atlas's impending arrival to weigh humanity's morality? Well, before you make that decision, let's have a look at what he allegedly had to say first. So according to the all-caps red font internet statements, Cayce's scariest warning yet is about to unfold in our lifetime, because Three Eye Atlas is in fact the key to an alien invasion, opening a gate for extraterrestrials during its October 29th perihelion. And if that wasn't enough to make you quit your job and sell your house, then you should know that if humanity fails the aliens' morality test, upheaval shall be unleashed upon us. Fortunately, if we pass, it will usher in a new spiritual awakening. But unfortunately, I do have to caveat that, because there is also a possibility that the comet's close approach to Mars could also trigger a cosmic alarm that causes Atlantis' return or a pole shift, either or. So did the sleeping prophet actually foresee such an event? Well, kind of. Cayce certainly did not shy away from the metaphysical, or what we would now consider fringe woo stuff, and he did make reference to future cosmic visitors in his readings from 1920 to 1940. He also spoke of major Earth changes and souls from alternate star systems, but at no point did he make a literal prediction of an alien ship or an invasion tied to a comet's arrival in 2025. In fact, there is no authentic Cayce reading that mentions comets, asteroids, UFOs, or interstellar objects at all. And on top of that, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, which is a non-profit organization founded by Edgar Cayce in 1931 himself, also confirms no comet-related predictions exist whatsoever in any of his over 14,000 readings, nor does he ever mention 2025 specifically. These claims currently being attributed to Cayce and Three Eye Atlas are almost exclusively found in sensational YouTube videos, all conveniently beginning in August this year, which is coincidentally around the time that the comet's discovery began to gain traction. What I think we actually have here is a classic case of just cherry picking, and with a treasure trove of mystical prophetic works to choose from, it's not hard to see why Cayce fit the bill. Blend his ideas and writings with a bit of UFO lore and you have yourself a viral piece of content. But if you're paying attention, you'll quickly notice how those making these claims don't even attempt to give their audience a source. You're just bombarded with fear porn and vague references to 1930s visions or supposed overlooked warnings from obscure trance states, which is kind of like, okay, cool, which one? And seriously, as a side note, if you do have one, let me know. And our final prophecy making the rounds is one that finds itself attributed to the Hopi and their accounts of Blue Star Kachina. And this particular concoction is actually a little bit annoying, because I don't know how many times the Hopi specifically, but even on a broader scale, many other indigenous peoples have to tell us, the wider public, not to reinterpret their prophecies into doomsday predictions. When it comes to Nostradamus, Vanga, or Cayce, these are long since past singular figures, and without dates and limited living contingents of their legacies, it is left to the modern interpreter to decipher meaning where they deem it present. I don't have a problem with that until it comes to making grandiose claims on their behalf using words they never spoke. But in the case of the Hopi prophecies, in my opinion at least, it takes some gall to just completely disregard the words of the living elders and just slap a whole new spin on there when the opportunity presents itself. And I'll be the first to admit that the Hopi prophecies are absolutely fascinating writing, and if you've ever read them or looked into their petroglyphs or tablets, the mind naturally does wonder, and you will try to find the meaning of it all, which again, I have no problem with that. I would actually encourage you to do so. But what we have to keep in mind is that these are sacred oral traditions and cyclical teachings, and they have outright told us that they've not shared everything they know with the world, which you would think would lead one to realize that announcing the oncoming fulfillment of the prophecies on the Hopi's behalf is unwise. But once again, that did not stop Hale-Bopp being linked to the Blue Star Kachina, nor has it stopped 3i Atlas. So what is it we're supposed to be buying this time? To explain that, I do need to give you a little bit of context surrounding the Hopi oral tradition, which isn't necessarily the easiest thing to definitively state, as each Hopi mesa or village can have its own version of a particular story, but when it comes to their creation narrative and cosmology, they do tend to highly correlate with each other. But in short, the Hopi traditions recount in detail the cyclical nature of human existence. They describe their history and emergence from 3 previous worlds, the 4th one being what we currently inhabit. But where things take a slightly darker turn is the Hopi's prophecy regarding the conclusion of the 4th world, a message of such deep significance that in December 1992, Elder Thomas Banyakia Sr. delivered a historic address to the United Nations General Assembly in New York.
Our people are concerned that many problems are going to come to this land someday. They know of first world where human life starts. Land was beautiful and clean, but human invented so many things and misused it on animal, birds, and plant life. They won't stop it. That was totally destroyed by nature. They were upheaval of land. The biggest earthquake took place. Many land was separated, sunk. A handful of people came out to the second world. Second world, they went quite a ways. It was beautiful, clean again. Again, humans start inventing many things. Turn away from their spiritual ways. Moral principles are lost. Invented so many things, so they won't stop that. Then nature took over again. This time, everything froze. There must be an ice age came to that period. But handful of people came. Third world. Up to that point, we human beings were speaking one language. A third world went quite a long ways, they said. Invent so many things, highly developed weapons of all kinds, and they developed spiritual things, and instead of using for good purposes, they turn it against nature again. And this time that world was destroyed by flood. At last stages, very few people who follow the law of Great Spirit, who listened, sat there. And I noticed in this building, there should be every chair filled by United Nations people here. They should listen first time to native people upon whose land this is. They should be here. They should do something with their laws, rules, and regulations. And they're not supposed to use war, because this was set up to do away with war. Hope we know that there are a lot of problems coming because we misuse that power again. Only a handful of people came out. I hope that many of you here today will listen and do something. When we came to the third world, they went spread out all over this continent to the edges of land. And some of our young people say, a white brother, he was given the same instructions, and he was given sacred stone tablets that we still have 2 sets of them in Horaibi and Hordvella. And our white brother took those 2 sets of stone tablets, went around the other side of the world. And he was to record things, to invent things. And if he followed the spiritual way, he was supposed to make life beautiful, clean on the other side and lasting. And then he was to come back here to his younger brother, who's still holding this land in balance by prayer, meditation, ceremonies, fasting, rituals of all kinds. So we kept this land beautiful, clean. When it rained, you're not worried about drinking rainwater any place. There were a lot of grass, a lot of animals, birds. This was beautiful, like they described something like I've read in the Bible, a place called Garden of Eden. This Western Hemisphere was like that. But when our white brother came, we know that he put aside spiritual things. He's going to go out material things, and he's going to again misuse the power he developed. Many of our people are going to be forced out of their homeland, and they will take their land, hunting rights, or fishing rights, or forest away from them, and toward last days they're going to be homeless. Today, you see thousands of our own people landless, homeless, starving in this country. This land is a home of our people. This is the only land we have, only country we have. We have taken care of this land according to the law of the Great Spirit. And he told us, if whoever comes and disturb it, he's going to suffer a much greater punishment and soon. So I thought I should go and help bring this message to wherever I may be able to get to. I represent the elders who had no treaty with any nation, not even with the United States government. So I can't go to United States government passport to travel in foreign country. We have to make our own Hopi passport. So I use that to travel to Stockholm, Germany, Moscow, Czechoslovakia, France, Italy, El Salvador, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, Japan 2 times and spread this message. If no one correct change these wrongdoings in this land, there'll be a purification take place. These are some of the things, the terrible things that the Hopi know, and I like to tell you this because today nature is active. There's terrible earthquakes right now, different places, landslide, tornadoes, hurricanes, volcanic eruption, tidal waves, hailstorm getting bigger and powerful that it may destroy many nations. If we do not stop, we're getting close to that time. Birds flying up there, they fall down. Bears come into the cities, warning of people that human beings are chopping down trees, their homes, their food. They come and tell you, but they don't understand. Whales came into San Francisco, telling the people, you're polluting ocean out there, we can't live anymore, you must stop it. But we don't listen. These are some things that the Hopi were concerned when they throw that wood full of ashes on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, burn everything to ashes, and in the Hopi and Navajo area, they pick up this uranium. They left thousands of tons of uranium waste, creating sickness, cancer, death, deformed babies appearing more and more. We must clean up this mess. If we start cleaning up this mess, many lives will be able to survive and go on into good life again.
Since August this year, hundreds of thousands of online viewers have engaged in YouTube videos declaring that the Hopi warned us about 3i Atlas, or that an elder themselves foretold of our imminent annihilation at the hands of an alien civilization. And that's simply not true. The Hopi tell us that they view Blue Star Kachina in a symbolic sense as a call for moral renewal, not a literal doomsday comet. These modern retrofits like Hale-Bopp in 1997 or 3i Atlas today have actually been repeatedly dismissed by the Hopi. Like I said earlier, the prophecies and teachings of the indigenous people of North and South America are something I do really highly recommend you look into if you haven't already. They're important and they're relevant now more than ever. Just remember that assigning meaning in the most literal and physical sense is to ignore what the creators of these prophecies cautioned against from the very beginning. Look, this is just my opinion, but I have to say these claims just feel like pure fabrications motivated by some weird desire for viral hype. And on that note, what is funny to me is that if you had to choose a prophet to run this alien doomsday narrative with, Paravinci is the obvious choice. That man has a buffet of Martian, Venusian, Neptunian, Mercurian, Mantis, Comet, Asteroid, cataclysmic disaster prophecies to choose from, and given his track record, they are worth discussing and having a real analysis done, which is a missed opportunity, I'd say. On another note, from what I've seen, 99% of this content is created with AI voiceovers and full AI imagery, which isn't a wholly bad thing in and of itself, but it does tell me a lot in this particular context. If these videos were actual human beings on the screen and genuinely discussing and engaging in what they found, where it comes from, and what it could mean, fine, no problem. That type of genuine exploration and open dialogue is just what we need more of. It actually benefits us as a collective in a world of dwindling curiosity and materialism, but unfortunately, it's increasingly becoming the rarity, not the exception. These AI productions don't produce research, they're not thoughtfully conceived pieces of content. It's just grifting. And I don't care if that sounds harsh because it's just the truth. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that every video or tweet needs to be some profound philosophic masterpiece, but the internet is festering with this kind of baseless shit now, and the only contribution it makes to the world is promoting unfounded fear and anxiety. I don't think there's any integrity in that. And I should also be clear that I'm not advocating for dismissing all prophecies as nonsensical ramblings either. Far from it, actually, because many of the prophets over the years have found themselves validated in life and in death. We just need to make sure that, one, they actually said it, and two, that we bear in mind that these things are often elusive and multifaceted by nature. So by all means, heed the authenticated warnings, but don't let them rule your life.